Hey y'all, so today I'm going to be doing another Try a Chapter book tag. I've been in a pretty big reading slump all year long, but I've been wanting to get back into the swing of reading and I figured that my winter break was the perfect chance. So like I did last year, I'm going to do a Try a Chapter book tag right before break to try to figure out what books to take with me. Earlier today, I filmed a top of my TBR video and that will be linked up in the cards. But in that video, I listed maybe 10 to 12 books that were really piquing my interest right now, and I went into detail about like the current mood that I'm in, which is essentially really quickly dark academia, murder mystery, atmospheric. Like the setting is really intriguing to me. I want somewhere with like an interesting setting, like Oxford or like a small town, like some sort of like interesting setting. I'm not describing that very well, but those are the things that are really piquing my interest right now. And of those books that I listed in my top of my TBR video, I picked the 5 that were most intriguing to me, and while not all of them hit on all of those points I just listed off, they all hit at least one of them. So I'm gonna run through them really quickly and show them to you, and then I'm going to move on to reading the first chapters. So first up is one that was actually, I think, included in another Try a Chapter book tag that I did, so I'm going to be reading this first chapter for a second time, and that is Onyx by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is the second book in her Lux series. This is a bind-up of the first 2 books, so it's not like this massive book. The bookmark denotes where the books separate. I read Obsidian about this time last year. I think I read it over winter break last year. And like I said in my top of my TBR video, Onyx has kind of been that annoying child on my bookshelf, just like poking me for the past year, being like, hey, Kristen, don't you want to read me? Read me. Please read me. And I am going to give the first chapter another chance. Not that it left a bad impression the first time. In fact, I'm pretty sure I was immediately drawn back into this world and into these characters, and I really wanted to read it, and I'm not sure why I didn't. And this is one of the ones that has less of a dark tone, but it does take place in a small town, and it does have kind of like eerie vibes and paranormal vibes, so that's what's really intriguing about it to me. And also I have books 2 through 4 on hold for me at the library. Yes, this is a bind up of 1 and 2, but this is really big, so if I could take like individual books 2, 3, 4 with me, and then 5 from my own shelf, I might do that. I don't know, but I do have those available to me if I want to take the whole series. The next one is The Sitterford Mystery by Agatha Christie. This is one that I just recently got, and I didn't know it existed until then, and I love Agatha Christie, so I usually at least recognize the titles of her books when browsing in bookstores. And when I didn't recognize this title, it caught my eye, and the premise sounded intriguing. The premise centers around several occultists who get trapped in like this mansion, I believe, during a snowstorm, and they discover a body or someone dies, one of those two, and I'm assuming that that means that one of them did it, or maybe it was the spirits. So it seems like it might have some sort of like hidden traitor trope to it, which is one of my favorite things. That's why I love And Then There Were None. So I'm really intrigued by this one, and it's really tiny, so it's easy to take with me on a trip. So even if I'm not like completely obsessed with this first chapter, even if I enjoy it, I might still take it anyway. Next up is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This definitely fits in the atmospheric part of what I'm in the mood for. Like, it's set in Oxford, and it sounds like it's going to be fantasy but very mysterious, and that just sounds really intriguing. It just sounds like there are a lot of cool fantastical paranormal elements, and also it centers really heavily around the Bodleian Library, and like I said, it takes place in Oxford, which the atmosphere of Oxford is fantastic. I've been to Oxford. I love Oxford. It's the coolest place I've ever been, so I would love to read an atmospheric novel that takes place there. The next one is another one that takes place across the pond, and that is The Likeness by Tana French. This is the second book in the Dublin Murder Squad series, and this kind of hits on that kind of dark academia murder mystery mood that I'm in. The main character of this story is a detective, and there's a crime scene discovered where a girl who was an alias of the detective was found murdered. So the main character assumes her life and basically starts passing herself off as the girl who died, and that girl, I believe, was a graduate student, so it's kind of taking place at a college, and the detective is trying to figure out why exactly this girl died. So like I said, kind of dark academia, more of a murder mystery, but I've heard very good things about this, and I've heard good things about the writing and about the overall like atmosphere of these books, so I'm intrigued to jump into this. And finally, the fifth book is the one that I've really touted in like multiple videos recently, that this is the one that I'm probably gonna end up reading next, and that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Ever since reading If We Were Villains by ML Rio and loving it, I have been in this, like I said, murder mystery, dark academia mood, and that's exactly what this is. After reading If We Were Villains, I went online trying to find books that were similar to it, and I saw some people saying that they thought that that book copied this book. So immediately I was like, yes, I want to check this out. And I got 50 pages in, and then I set it down because I just wasn't in a reading mood. I was enjoying the book, but I just wasn't in a reading mood in general. So I'm gonna pick it up again, try to read the first chapter again. I don't remember what happens in the first chapter. So we'll see how that goes, see if it is in fact still what I'm in the mood for. I think it is, but we will see. As always, I will be doing them in a random order. I'm gonna do probably like a number generator. Tell me what order to read them in, and we'll go from there. So I will see you after I've read the first book, or the first chapter of the first book, not the entire first book. Hey, so I've just finished reading the first chapter of The Likeness by Tana French, and I really, really liked that. So this was actually a first chapter and a prologue, so I had to read both of them, and it was pretty long. It was like 30 pages, which is one of the longer chapters that I've had to read for one of these, and I think that by the end I was kind of like, okay, I want to finish this chapter, I want to move on to the next book, but not because I wasn't enjoying it, because I was really, really enjoying it. Given that this first chapter is so long, it's a pretty lengthy and good introduction to the main character, and to the overall tone of the novel, and to the writing style, and I really liked all three of those aspects. This is written in first person, and that can really, really make or break a novel, because if you don't like the main character's voice, then that could just be a deal breaker. But I really like the main character's voice, and I think that the like murder that they're going to be investigating sounds really interesting, and I just am very, very intrigued by this. I really enjoyed this first chapter. When you read like the description of a book or a premise of a book, it always gives you some sort of immediate reaction to it, like what you think it's going to be like, what you think the mood's going to be, stuff like that. And sometimes that's accurate and sometimes it's not accurate, and I think that I'm getting exactly what I expected out of this book, which is a really good thing because I expected a lot of interesting stuff out of this book. And so far, the writing style, the main character, the tone, they're all matching what I expected based on the premise. So overall, really excited about this one, and I'm probably going to be bringing this one with me over break, but I have 4 more books to read. We'll see. Hey, so I'm back again after reading the first chapter of Onyx by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I think I take back what I said earlier in the video. I don't think I read this first chapter as part of a try a chapter book tag because I don't remember any of it. I think what I was remembering was when I read the first chapter of Obsidian last year for the tag, but I don't think I've read this first chapter before. Anyway, Jennifer L. Armentrout, as always, is a master of making you not want to stop reading her books. Like, seriously, I continued on a couple pages past the first chapter without thinking, so I apparently want to continue this. That said, I did kind of find this to be a little bit more like cringy / cheesy than usual. Like, that's kind of her books' thing. They're a little bit cheesy, they're a little bit corny, but like, she makes you love them either way, and that's what this did. When I talked about Obsidian in a wrap-up, I talked about this review that I read on Goodreads of the book that really summed up my opinions on it, and one of the things that this reviewer said was that it's like she took all of the elements of Twilight, the good, bad, the ugly, and said, I'm gonna make you like this. So it's cheesy like Twilight, but in a way that makes you love it. And that's what's great about Jennifer L. Armentrout. That said, I do definitely think that I need a refresher on the first book before continuing, because I definitely have forgotten some of the stuff. I don't think I need a full reread because that would just take more time than it's worth, but I think I need to find like a plot synopsis online or a review or somewhere where someone is talking in depth about some of the paranormal elements of the story, because that's where my memory is failing me. But apart from that, I could easily see myself binge reading the next 4 books in the series, because these are just such easy books to binge read, and I really enjoy this. They're not the best books in the world, but they are really fun to read and very easy to binge read. Hey, so I'm back after finishing the first chapter of The Sitterford Mystery by Agatha Christie. Not gonna lie, kind of disappointed with this first chapter. It was obviously just set up. It's not a very long first chapter, but at the same time, I didn't enjoy the tone of it. Maybe I thought I was in the mood for, like, older fashioned writing, and maybe I'm just not, but something about the tone and the writing just wasn't really clicking right now. Honestly, I think the writing feels a little bit out of character for Agatha Christie, not like wildly out of character or anything, but it doesn't feel quite like her writing for some reason. I think maybe it feels a little bit older than it usually does. I don't know. Something about it doesn't read exactly like the Agatha Christie novels that I'm used to. That said, it has been over a year since I read one of her books, so maybe I'm misremembering or just not remembering it clearly, but I don't know, something about this just didn't click right now. That said, I haven't hit any of the stuff dealing with like any sort of murder or with the occultist stuff, which sounds intriguing, so like it hasn't really introduced any of the interesting aspects of the story that made me want to pick this up in the first place. It's just kind of introduced a couple characters, none of which are that compelling to me. I still might bring this along with me on break because it is such a tiny little book and it's only like 200 something pages, so it's a quick read, but it's definitely the least interesting one for me right now in terms of the ones that I've already read. Hey, so I'm back again after reading more or less the first chapter of The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This had a prologue and then the first chapter was almost 50 pages long, so I opted to, instead of reading the full first chapter, read until one of the slash marks in the middle of the page that are scattered throughout the chapter, so that's what I did. So it ended up being about 15 pages that I read. And as I'm pretty sure I said earlier in the video, I have already read those 13 pages, so that's why I cut it short, because I've read the first, I think, 50 pages of the book, and I didn't want to reread the entirety of what I'd already read. So I just read those first like 15 pages, the prologue and the first like 13 pages of chapter 1, and it immediately sucked me right back into the story. The atmosphere of this novel is really interesting. I really enjoy the main character's voice, even though it's really pretentious and kind of uppity. I really enjoy it, and I already absolutely love the setting. It takes place at a small liberal arts school in New England. It's very picturesque. I can literally picture it right now. It reminds me of a New England version of the undergrad that I went to, although this one is definitely more pretentious than my undergrad, but it gives me fond memories of my undergrad, and it reminds me why I love my undergrad, and I don't know, it just... The mood of this novel is really, really appealing to me. It reminds me of when I started If We Were Villains by Emil Rio, which I loved, and which that has been compared to this book. So yeah, I really enjoyed this first chapter. Definitely pulled me right back into the story. Definitely one I'm gonna consider picking up. Also, I forgot about the prologue. Like, I kind of remembered it existed, but for some reason my recollection of the beginning of the book is what happens in the beginning of chapter 1. So like reading the prologue was interesting because I just forgot that it existed. Like, I remembered that the events in the prologue happened, but I forgot that that was how the book started. Anyway, super interesting first 15 pages or so, and definitely something that I am super intrigued to continue. So I'm back again for the last time, this time after reading the first chapter of A Discovery of Witches. This was slightly different than expected, but definitely not in a bad way at all. So based solely on the title, I kind of expected the main character to discover that witchcraft exists sometime early in the book, or at least at some point in the book, but after reading the first chapter, I've realized that the main character is actually a witch and was aware that she was a witch from a very young age. And a closer rereading of the description on the back also mentions her as a witch in like the first couple sentences. So I guess I should have kind of expected that, but it's literally called A Discovery of Witches. I don't know. I kind of just expected that upon discovering this manuscript, she discovers that witches exist or that there's some sort of sorcery, but in fact, she already is aware of it. That said, I almost felt like I was thrown into like chapter 5 of a novel for some reason, rather than like chapter 1 of a first book of a series. It's kind of hard to explain because I feel like there was a lot of explanation in this first chapter as to the character's background and her dealings with magic, but at least for the first 2 or 3 pages, I kind of felt like I was being thrown into something like already begun. Like I felt like I had missed the prologue or something like that. And it wasn't like an overwhelmingly like I'm missing something feeling, but it just felt like I didn't start right at the beginning, and that's literally the best way I can explain it. Like, I guess it was the way that the main character was talking about some things, like you knew what she was talking about and I didn't know what she was talking about. So it was kind of that type of thing. That said, once I did get a few more pages into it and I got more of a feel for the story, I did feel a little bit more grounded in the world, and I do like the main character, and I really like the overall vibe of the story, even though I'm not sure that a fantasy novel is necessarily what I'm in the mood for right now. The tone and the setting are definitely what I'm in the mood for, but I'm not sure that the fantastical elements are. And they were definitely a lot more prominent in this first chapter than I expected them to be. And I guess that's partially because I expected us to be eased into this fantastical world, but we're kind of just thrown into it immediately. Like, magic exists. Like, that's apparent from page 1 because the main character is already aware she's a witch, and I expected her to discover that witchcraft exists. So that was a little bit of a tonal shift that I had to get used to. But like I said, I like the tone, I like the main character, I really like the setting, and I am definitely still intrigued by this. So now that I've finished all 5 of these first chapters, I'm going to give a really quick rundown on my thoughts, and also some stuff that's happened in between here because I have visited the library since then. I think I mentioned earlier in the video that I had multiple books of the Lux series on hold at the library, and I picked those up, and then I checked to see if the library where my parents live have them, and they do. So I have books 2 through 4 checked out here, and I put books 2 through 5 on hold there. So those are in the library. They're waiting for me to pick them up probably on Monday. So I will not be taking them with me on my trip, but I do plan on picking them up from the library next week. It's not exactly hitting every point of what I'm in the mood for, but I have so much trouble saying no to Jennifer L. Armentrout's books, and I have so much trouble putting them down, and I can really just see myself binge reading the rest of the 4 books in the series. Despite many assertions to the contrary throughout this video, I will not be bringing the Sittaford mystery with me, even though it's really small. I just don't see myself picking this up over break because everything else that I read was more intriguing than this. Plus, my parents' library has literally every Agatha Christie book ever, so I'm sure that it's probably just sitting there waiting for someone to check it out, and it probably hasn't been checked out in years. So I've also put books 2 and 3 of this trilogy, the All Souls trilogy, on hold at that library. So I'm taking this one with me. I think they also had the first book, but I figured I'd just bring my own copy. And then rounding these out, I will be bringing both The Secret History and The Likeness with me, and I'm going to probably be reading The Secret History as I travel if I read anything, because sometimes I'm bad about that, but if I read anything, it's definitely going to be The Secret History. I've also checked out the audiobook of Rebel Angels by Libba Bray, and I have that downloaded to my phone so I can listen to that while I'm traveling. I'm not sure that I'm going to, but after reading the first chapter of A Discovery of Witches, it's definitely an England vibe that I'm kind of in the mood for right now, so I just went ahead and downloaded it. Like at the start of the video, this is still the one that's really tugging at my attention and pestering me to read it even more than the Lux series, so I think this is going to be my next read. I want it to be my next read, and I want to actually read something. So this is coming with me. Hopefully I will be reading it as I travel tomorrow, and we'll see. I've literally only read 17 books this year, and of those 17 books, only 2 have gotten 5 stars, which is actually probably a lot for the ratio of books, but I've only read 2 5-star books this year, and I would like to at least get one more. And I'm not saying that this is definitely going to be a 5-star book, but it's intriguing me enough that it could be. So yeah, I'm bringing those 3 books with me, and I have several of them waiting to be checked out when I get to my parents' house, and I have the audiobook. Also, I just remembered that I put another book on hold, and you're gonna be like, really, Kristen? But I put the one by Kiera Cass on hold. I did this last year, and I meant to read the one, and it's well documented how I feel about the Selection series. Up in the cards. Hate reading the Selection. It's a fun video, I promise. It's not a series that I think is very good, but I enjoy laughing at it. So I would like to read the one at some point, and over break when I can just binge read it might be a good opportunity, and I could also possibly film a video doing that. I don't know, we'll see. So that's it for this video. Hopefully this time I actually read one of the books that I tried the first chapter of, but we will see. As always, I will leave links down in the description to my blog, Twitter, and Goodreads. Please add me as a friend on Goodreads. I would love to be friends with all of you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you so much for watching.